The vocabulary of a language is enriched not only by words but also by phraseological units. Phraseological units are word groups that cannot be made in the process of speech. They exist in the language as ready-made units. They are stable word groups characterized by a completely or partially transferred meaning and compiled in special dictionaries. The same as word phraseological units express a single notion and are used in a sentence as one part of it. American and British lexicographers call such units idioms. We can mention such dictionaries as Smith's Words and Idioms, Collins, A Book of English Idioms, etc. In these dictionaries, we can find words peculiar in their semantics, idiomatic, side by side with word groups and sentences. In these dictionaries, they are arranged as a rule into different semantic groups. Idioms are widely used in standard spoken and written English today and can be defined as established and essential speech units with fixed and constant structures. An idiom is a combination of words that has a meaning that is different from the meanings of the individual words themselves. It is a phrase which does not always follow the normal rules of meaning and grammar. The famous linguist Maghmadi says that many idioms are examples of strong collocations. For example, it is difficult to see why "spill the beans" should mean to give away secret information. The words and grammar that make up this idiom are almost impossible to change without changing the meaning. For example, to sit on the fence can literally mean that one is sitting on a fence. However, the idiomatic meaning of this phrase is that one is not making a clear choice regarding some issue. Many idioms are unique and fixed in their grammatical structure. The expression to sit on the fence cannot become to sit on a fence or to sit on the fences. Phraseological units, or idioms as they are called by most Western scholars, represent the most colorful and expressive part of the language's vocabulary. It reflects the nation's customs, facts, traditions of the past history. For example, dark horse, actually not a horse, but a person about whom no one knows anything definite, and so one is not sure what can be expected from him. It is connected with the British tradition to go horse races and bid as to what horse can win the race. Often the race is won by an unknown horse, hence the expression dark horse. For example, a white elephant is not a person, but a valuable object which involves great expense or trouble for its owner, out of all proportion to its usefulness or value, and which is also difficult to dispose of. This phrase came from interesting story when the king Siam presented such elephants to the people whom he wanted to ruin because it was very expensive to have these animals in the household. The idioms can be classified on the basis of different principles. The traditional and the oldest principle for classification is based on their original content and it might be formed as thematic. On this principle, they are classified according to their sources of origin, referring to different spheres of human activity, life of nature, natural phenomena, etc. Professor Smith distinguishes idioms connected with the sea, agriculture, wild and domestic animals, art, etc. For example, in deep waters means in trouble. Couch potato about a man who spends a lot of time watching television. Crocodile tears in sincere tears for effect only, etc. English idioms have many colloquial expressions with parts of human body. They are called somatic phrases. For example, face to face means person to person. To lose one's head means to be panic, lose control. Under one's nose, very close, easily noticed, etc. In modern linguistics, there is considerable confusion about the terminology associated with these word groups. Most Russian scholars use the term phraseological unit, which was first introduced by academician Vinogradov. Phraseological units can be classified according to the degree of motivation of their meaning. This classification was suggested by Vinogradov for Russian phraseological units. He pointed out three types of phraseological units: phraseological combinations, phraseological unities, and phraseological fusions. Phraseological combinations are word groups with a partially changed meaning. They may be said to be clearly motivated, that is, the meaning of the unit can be easily deduced from the meaning of its constituents. For example, to have a bite, to be a good hand at something, a dog's life, to skate on thin ice, etc. Phraseological unities are word groups with a completely changed meaning, that is, meaning of the unit does not correspond to meanings of its constituent parts. They are motivated units where the meaning of the whole unit can be guessed from the meanings of its components, but it is transferred metaphorical or metonymical. For example, to play the first fiddle means to be a leader in something, to stick to one's word, to promise, and so on. Phraseological fusions are word groups with completely changed meanings. They are not motivated units. We cannot guess the meaning of the whole from the meanings of its components. These phrases are highly idiomatic and cannot be translated word for word into other languages. For example, a white feather, to cut somebody dead, means to rudely ignore somebody, to pretend not to know or recognize him. A skeleton in the cupboard means a shameful or dangerous family secret, etc. Structural classification of phraseological units. Professor Smenitsky worked out structural classification of phraseological units, comparing them with words. He points out one top units which he compares with derived words because derived words have only one root morpheme. He points out two top units which he compares with compound words because in compound words we usually have two root morphemes. Among one-top units, he points out three structural types. Units of that type: to give up, verb plus postposition type. For example, to add up, to back up, to sandwich in, etc. Units of the type to be tired. Some of these units remind the passive voice in their structure, but they have different prepositions with them, while in the passive voice we can have only prepositions by or with. For example, to be tired of, to be interested in, to be surprised at, etc. Prepositional nominal phraseological units. These units are equivalents of unchangeable words, prepositions, conjunctions, adverbs. That is why they have no grammar center. Their semantic center is the nominal part. For example, on the doorstep, on the nose, on the stroke of, etc. Among two top units, Smirnitsky points out the following structural types: attributive nominal, such as a month of Sundays, grey matter, a milestone, round one's neck, and many others. Units of this type are noun equivalents and can be partly or perfectly idiomatic. Verb nominal phraseological units. For example, to read between the lines, to sweep under the carpet, etc. The grammar center of such units is the verb. The semantic center, in many cases, is the nominal component. For example, to fall in love. In some units, the verb is both the grammar and the semantic center. For example, not to know the ropes. These units can be perfectly idiomatic as well. For example, to burn one's boats, to vote with one's feet, to take to the cleaners, etc. Phraseological repetitions such as now or never, part or parcel, country and western, etc. Such units can be built on antonyms, for example, ups and downs, back and forth. Often they are formed by means of alliteration, for example, cakes and ale, as busy as a bee. Phraseological units can be classified as parts of speech. This classification was suggested by Arnold. Here we have the following groups: noun phraseologisms denoting an object, a person, a living being, for example, a dog's life, a big shot, green beret. Verb phraseologisms denoting an action, a state, a feeling, for example, to break, the logjam, to rain, cats and dogs, to be on the beam, etc. Adjective phraseologisms denoting a quality, for example, loose as a goose, safe and sound, as thin as a rail, high and mighty. The classification system of phraseological units suggested by Professor Kunin is the latest outstanding achievement in the Russian theory of phraseology. This classification is based on the combined structural semantic principle and subdivided into four classes. Nominative phraseological units are represented by word groups, including the ones with one meaningful word, we and tear, well and good. Nominative communicative phraseological units include word groups of the type to break the ice is broken, that is, verbal word groups are transformed into a sentence when the verb is used in the passive voice. Communicative phraseological units are represented by proverbs and sayings. These four classes are divided into subgroups according to the type of structure of the phraseological units. The classification system includes a considerable number of subtypes and gradations and objectively reflects the wealth of types of phraseological units existing in the language. It is based on scientific and modern criteria and represents an earnest attempt to take into account all the relevant aspects of phraseological units and combine them with the borders of one classification system.